Welcome back to the Mackem in the Middle podcast. Two games to cover this time as opposed to just the one. Obviously, a midweek win away to Blackburn Rovers, a 3-1 win on the road, and the most recent game, a 1-0 defeat at home to Cardiff. And we will cover both games, what happened during them, the goals, team selections, players coming back, etc., etc., etc. But starting with that Blackburn game, John, and want to obviously get onto the Cardiff game as well. It's going to be an interesting comparison between the two games because they are the definition of polar opposites in terms of performance compared to result. But on that Blackburn game, I think that was our third win in a row. It was the first time we've won 3 games in a row in a while, and it was a good win and a big 3 points.
Yeah, it was a cracking win, to be fair. Blackburn, I know Mugs, to be fair, they played some okay football and, probably battered us sort of first at least half an hour, I'd say. Obviously didn't really take their chances. And as we found out yesterday, in the Cardiff game, if you don't take chances, you're going to struggle. But yeah, a fantastic result, a battling performance for a lot of it. And, when we get a foot on the ball and a bit of a hold away from home, we're definitely a different beast in that, and that obviously showed. I think we scored at the right time. Obviously we went ahead. They obviously equalised through what we'd call a poor goal from ourselves, and then you scored just before. He scored just before half time with Dan Neil, and that puts you in at half time, and you're sort of flying. Add to that second half, probably should have had more goals. But yeah, on the whole, a fantastic result. Away to a very, very, very good team.
Yeah. And obviously we were going to do a podcast after that Blackburn game, Michael, but we didn't. The narrative of that game was very much going to be how Sunderland, especially at the start of the season, their performances didn't really match the results. We were playing well in the early games. That Ipswich game probably minimum deserved a point out of it. Arguably 3. The Preston game again arguably deserved a point out of it, possibly 3. We didn't get them. The performance was there. The Blackburn game was very much the opposite. The performance in general was, especially in that first half, from kind of a midfield and a defence point of view, we were conceding so many chances, giving the ball away very cheaply and just looking quite all over the place, but got the result playing badly, which was, like I said, the complete opposite to what happened in the opening 2 games of the season.
Oh, it definitely was. I mean, you couldn't get more polar opposites if you try compared to, because the narrative seems to be, or we've raised that the angle seems to be that we didn't get the result our performances deserved, or the result was better than the performance. We do have to credit Blackburn in that regard, because I think Ewood Park's going to be quite a tricky place for teams to go to. And Blackburn, I mean, fair play to them. And like John said, first half an hour at least, came onto us relentlessly. And although the goal we conceded was poor, that was at the time that equaliser went in, that was coming, because the way that Blackburn had set up, the aggression and the intensity that they showed. Thankfully, Sunderland managed to ride it out. Getting the goal before half time in that game was crucial for us to have any chance of going on to get the 3 points, because I mean, even second half, when Blackburn was still coming at Sunderland, we were dealing with them a bit better and we looked much more of a threat on the break. But there's no doubt in your mind that I think Blackburn away, that's an impressive win, especially considering the performance, because Blackburn didn't let us settle at all.
Yeah. 2 of the goals in that game, John, obviously from Clark. I think he was joint top goal scorer come the end of that game. Obviously wins the penalty, which there was no question marks over. It's a clear penalty, and scores it, and obviously gets the last goal in the game as well. And I'd say 5 goals for him so far this season. I think I might have to double check this, but I think he had 7 last season.
I think it was 9, but I could be wrong. Like 9 in the
7 or 9. Yeah. So, in terms of how much he's come on, obviously he had a great season last season, got Premier League interest, albeit from Burnley, who, kept lowballing with the offers. He seems to have improved a lot in the final third, and looks like he could hit double figures for certainly goals again this season, but also assists as well if it starts to click a little bit more for the rest of the attacking players.
Yeah, definitely. He's probably been so far maybe player of the season so far. I know we're very early on in, but he's adding consistent goals to his game, and he is a real threat. And I think obviously our tactic is to get the ball to him as much as we can, and to be fair, he's quite predictable. He likes to cut inside a lot of the time, and it's even though you know what he's going to do, it's still a real hard thing to defend against because he's just so good on the ball. He's probably the reason we did actually win midweek. Just hitting those levels, and you can tell why there is Premier League interest in him. But obviously, him having an amazing season is only going to help us. Hopefully, maybe project up to the next league, and in the hope that then you do keep him, because I think if we do just miss out, I think ultimately it's probably time that, well, obviously we don't want to, but I think it's time that he probably does, maybe get a bigger move, shall we say? I'm not saying Burnley is a bigger move, but to someone better than them, and for very good money. But at the moment he's ours, and he's actually on fire, and to me as well, I think he's adding his defensive work, which I think we get caught out, especially last season, a few times with, letting crosses come in because sort of Sirkin's 2-on-1, or, his defensive side of it is really, really good. The only thing I'm worried about now is him playing every single week. Have we got a replacement who can play there and be as good? Bennett seems a bit injury prone at the minute. Is there anyone else?
Obviously, Rooson, I think, would be the replacement. Obviously, I haven't seen much of him yet, but
yeah, that's obviously an option. But obviously we need to get him up to speed, because ultimately we don't want Jack Clark playing sort of 90 minutes and every 3 days, because to be fair, the amount of action he's involved in, and he gets kicked, he gets he does leave his foot dangling there a few times with with the ball, and he does invite challenges. So you've got to expect that. So that's my only little worry. But on the whole, we know he's a fantastic player, and we've given him the platform to go and show that. And to be fair, he's taken his chance, and ultimately, that's why we win the game.
We do, and he scores 2 of the 3 goals in that game. Michael, Dan Neil obviously gets the third goal, but the second goal in the game, and he's a player that last season had a lot of quality, but again, in such a short space of time, seems to have just improved massively. And I think the technical ability for Neil was always there, but I think his decision making, his composure at times, last season was very poor. Multiple times, he'd get caught on the ball, he'd make the wrong pass or he'd make the wrong decision. Whereas this season, he seems to have, in a footballing term, aged about 5 years, because the composure's, twice as good, his decision making's twice as good, and he's adding a little bit more to his game as well in the final third.
Well, exactly. I mean, he's someone. I mean, obviously, if you look at, he was introduced in League One, and I think if you compare the player that he is then to the player that he is now, it's like with Jack Clark. It's chalk. I mean, obviously, Jack Clark came back permanently after a loan, but it was chalk and cheese, wasn't it? And again, it's like John said about Jack Clark. This is going to be another player that, if we don't get promoted, that we're going to probably struggle. Maybe not quite as much, but certainly potentially struggle to hang on to. And the only problem is there, at least make sure you get a decent fee. But again, it's all about replacing him, I suppose. But yeah, Daniel, I really like the look of him. And, obviously his finish in the game away at Blackburn was very, very good. So the composure, and as you said, yeah, in football terms, he's aged 5 years. Obviously, this, I think 21's the new 26, 27 years old for us by the looks of it. So good thing that he has done. I know, I do got to remember as well, he had to sort of reinvent his game slightly with Evans being out last season, where he had to step in and take on the Evans role and, be the person who dictates things from the middle of the park. And even though we obviously yesterday, for example, didn't come off for us, I thought there were times when he was pretty good again in the middle of the park. But as I said before, the likes of him or Jack Clark, if we don't go up this season, we have to accept there's a good chance that teams in the Premier League will take them off us.
They will. Obviously, that game in itself finishes 3-1, and I think it took Sunderland up to 4th, I think, at the time.
Yes, it did.
Still a bit of a gap between the top, obviously Preston and Ipswich. Early days, but as it stands, walking away, from the rest of the league. I think there's now a 8-point gap. I think it might be possibly even bigger from Sunderland to the top 2, which I'm just gonna try and get up here. Obviously, Leicester, Ipswich on 21, Preston on 20, Sunderland on 13. So it is an 8-point gap. But like I say, only 8 games played, still 38 games to play. Quick maths. But the next game, which, we talked about that Blackburn game just, John, and we said the performance wasn't great. The result was Cardiff game, again, complete opposite. I think the performance, compared to that Blackburn game was, probably 5 to 10 times better. Barely gave Cardiff a sniff the entire game. The build-up play was there, created chances, forced the keeper into saves. But the result, similar to the Preston game, similar to Ipswich game, just wasn't there. And, again, 8 games into the season, it's, too early to be concerned or excited or whatever it would be. But that's now 3 games where the performance has been good, but the result hasn't been. And there's only so many games you can get away with, dropping points with them performances.
Yeah, spot on. Obviously, we spoke off air about it. To me, it was. I mean, on the whole, I'd probably say it was sort of a 6 to 7 out of 10 performance. Maybe got unlucky with a few chances. I don't think we had, so many clear-cut ones. And then it's sort of, a bit of naivety, I think. At the back, you're looking at 2, great players. Who are doing really well this season in 09 and Hume. And, for me, obviously, Hume switches off, gives away a stupid corner. Can we then deal with it? You're looking at your captain who's more interested in, rugby tackling his player instead of just sort of, just watching the ball and just stopping him. And not that the defender knows anything about it, but like you say, we're sucker punched. And, for me, I think, probably sounds really harsh, but I think we got what we deserved. I don't think the tempo was there. I don't think we were expansive enough. I thought it was quite sort of one-dimensional. Went across the pitch, back across the pitch, and have we got anything else? And didn't really change the way we play. Are we streetwise enough to think we can play a different way for 20 minutes? And nick a goal. That's the difference in teams winning the league and not winning the league or getting promoted and not getting promoted. So for me, it was a bit huffy puffy for me. I don't think Pritchard had his best game. Always seems to play better when he comes on. I don't know if we need to sub him on in the first minute or something to maybe get him going. I'm probably rambling now, but it just seemed to me I just seemed to be really frustrated, and it is a weird one because we did play well, or well enough. But when they scored, it was a bit we almost deserve that because of just a bit of a lack of concentration from some real steady players.
I think Patterson is largely at fault for the goal as well. Because you've probably seen it back a few times. He seems to leave the ball thinking it's going out of play. It's not much power on the header. If it was even a header or it hit, I don't know where it hit, but it kind of just bounces over the line. And Patterson looks to think that it's going past the post and doesn't really make any attempt to try and save it.
Yes, I think maybe if we're being hypercritical, maybe you'd expect your goalkeeper just to go for it. But I think the mistakes are already done. Yes, Patterson could probably. It might be one of them when you watch it back, and you think, I could have done something, and then in real time, it's just a bit. The ball has literally just gone past him. It's it's one of them. But for me, the first 2 is that what's Trey Hume doing? He's been solid, or he has he didn't start the season as well as maybe he finished it last season, and gives away a corner out of nothing. And you're just thinking just tighten up. And then from set pieces, we're normally pretty good defensively, on the whole normally. And then it's the defender doesn't know too much about it, but for me it's quite poor from Luke 09. But yeah, I don't think in the game we really. I don't think we probably deserved it. I mean, a draw would have been, fair. I thought Cardiff were absolutely turgid, and just watching them just waste time. And we could probably start on the officials as well, because the added on time was.
The time that I think was 2 minutes in the first half, which Pritchard even reacted to on the pitch quite clearly, and. The idea is good. if teams time wasting, add the time on. That's how it should be. But, when you compare some of the games early in the season, I think Ipswich, there was 12 minutes added on the second half, or first half, whichever one it was. And, the stoppages, especially in the first half in the Cardiff game, they had 2 players down injured for a minimum minute, at least a minute. You've got, every goal kick, which seemed to take, 20, 30 seconds. I think there's probably 6 or 7 of them. There's, probably 3-4 minutes from set pieces. There's 5 minutes. And it's just kind of, again, one of the words that you use with officials, usually with just decisions, is, inconsistency. But the time wasting and, added time, it's irrelevant if they're not going to be consistent with it.
Yeah, well, it seems like the initiative was there. The initiative's been for sort of 4 weeks, and now the initiative's gone, and we're back to square one. It's almost like someone said, "No, we don't want that to happen. Just carry on." And again, I'm not excusing us losing because it happened, and I don't think it was anything to do with the time really. But where's the consistency? Where's it happened? Teams can come up and frustrate us, and they did frustrate us. They broke up the play. A lot of stupid fouls. Like you say, a lot of time wasted on throw-ins, goal kicks, substitutions, people laying on the floor, and those sorts of things have got to be tightened up. But going back to the, original question, it's one of those you just write off. It seems a weird one, but obviously we haven't won 3 games in a row for a very long time. And then it's happened now. We've got that bit of consistency, and I just thought it doesn't matter who we played. The 4th one, I just thought was probably a bit of a stretch, just too far.
Yeah.
Obviously that proved, and we keep saying we've got to expect it because we've got young players in the team. But yeah, I think if you've got aspirations to get promoted, which we have, which that's a well documented thing from those in power at the club. You can't be losing your home games to Cardiff. I think they done this last year as well, 1-0 at home. Same type of thing. And like I said, you've got to be streetwise against that. We've got to find a different way when the going gets tough. I'm not saying it was proper tough yesterday, but just to get a goal from somewhere. Can we break it up? Can we flood the box? We brought, this is probably another side criticism, we brought Hamir on, and he was sort of coming out onto the wing and linking play. So when we got the ball in the box, we didn't have those players in the box. And it's like, but we need someone in there constantly, and then you bring Russin on and we just concede. It's literally the energy just sapped out of the team, and it's like pointless, even though he looked okay. Sorry for going on.
Right.
Not me for once, so it's at first.
You look at the stats in the game, though, Michael, and I think their keepers made. I think I can tell you how many saves the keeper made. The keeper made 7 saves. Plenty of crosses came into the box that you had to collect as well. So the chances were there for Sunderland, and off the top of my head, there was one in the first half where I think Pritchard gets the ball in the kind of 6-yard box, has a shot that's deflected. Roberts, other end of the pitch in the second half, very similar position, doesn't quite get the connection on it, and keeper makes a good save, but a quite comfortable save. And it's all good, creating these chances, forcing keepers into saves, this, that, and the other, but you need to start taking them. And, winning 4 games in a row, I think John said before we started recording, I don't even think Sheffield United, who got promoted, did that last season. It is a very hard league, especially now, to go on that kind of run. But what shouldn't be too hard, and again, alluding to what John said before, is with that being a home game, you should be at least coming away from this, I think it would be 6 games unbeaten.
Well, this is the thing, because we did have the chances yesterday to score them. I mean, you could tell that Cardiff were pinned in their own third for basically 80 minutes until the very end. Well, I mean, they had maybe a half chance in the first half, but that aside, for me personally, I could tell Cardiff were content to come up here and get a point. And sorry, that was a good timing. Trying to choke on the podcast, but I'm choking with the thought of it. But no, I mean, for them, you've got to give them credit. It worked for that, because they not only got a point, they got all 3. I think we should be. This is one thing where if the standards are, we're going to expect to get promoted, then games like that have to be wins. It's as simple as that. Or at the very least, you come out with them with getting a point. Although, I mean, the stats do suggest that we've scored 15 goals this season so far. So we have been Blackburn was probably clinical in some senses, whereas obviously this game, to go back to the polar opposites point, wasn't. I kind of got what John said about deserving what you get for not being street smart, but I would argue that if you're going to deserve what you get, Cardiff did next to nothing attacking wise all game. So I would argue that they didn't. Well, I know that's not what John's saying, but I don't think Cardiff deserved any more than a point. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter for them. They got it. My frustration, and I think again John said this as well, which I actually agree with, is that you don't take your chances, fine, but then don't give silly corners away, which then leads to goals. If you don't take your chances away, then at least make sure you come out of that with a 0-0 draw. Because say if later on in the season, I mean, I'm not suggesting we are going to be in the top two, but say, for example, if we finish third and miss out on second by a point, then, you know, how big could that point be towards the end of the season? But there's no getting away from the fact that our home form, I mean, it's starting to look a similar story when teams come up here and put 10 men behind the ball, that we struggle to break them down because there's not much space to run into an attack in front of us. And we're an intricate team that likes to run down the channels and create chances and either whip the ball into the box or whip chances where people are coming behind on the edge of the box to shoot or whatever it is. Blackburn, as an example, we were able to do that because they went for it and we had the space on the counter to attack because of it. Whereas Cardiff showed next to no intention of going forward. And that isn't a dig at Cardiff. That's their tactics. Fair enough. It worked for them. But it's something we're going to have to get used to. We are going to have to get used to the fact that we are going to have to try and break teams down. I do wonder as well how much of it is because we've become so accustomed to playing without a striker that now we've got one in the team, we don't know how to adapt.
I'm going to stop you there because that was a point I was going to make as well. And I think...
I promise I didn't segue on purpose.
I mean, I wasn't going to make it. I was, but then I wasn't. Now I am. But, you know, Burstow, you know, hasn't done much. Obviously, given the ball net rash, apparently, in training. Haven't seen that in a game yet. Hamia, you know, was given a game, didn't do awfully much, and then, you know, hasn't really been given much of a chance since. And, you know, a lot of people have actually been saying what you've just said there, is that Sunderland becomes so accustomed to playing without a striker that when you do have that, you know, 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" player, you know, in the box, we aren't using it, and we're not using it the way we could be. You know, Sunderland have a plan A. And everyone knows what Sunderland's plan A is. It's, you know, recycle possession, keep the ball, you know, play 1-2s, triangles, and, you know, score goals in general, but score, what's the word? Like satisfying goals, I suppose. That's essentially what Sunderland are trying to do. But what we always used to talk about last season was when that's not going well, we're knackered because we don't have a plan B. We don't have that 6'4" striker or 6'2" striker or even 6 foot centre back to aim for from a set piece, from a corner, from a cross, or whatever it would be. This season we do. You've got Ballard back in defence now, who's, you know, 6'2", should be a threat from set pieces. You've got Job in midfield, who's 6'2", 6'3". Burst obviously started the game 6'2". Hamia came on 6'4", and we aren't using that plan B. You know, we're not getting balls in the box. We're taking short corners. We're taking short free kicks. We're just still trying to adapt plan A as opposed to switching to plan B when A is not working.
Well, I can't believe I'm quoting Russell Martin here, but one of the quotes he said was plan B is to do plan A better. And that seems to me what we're trying to do. We're trying to do plan A so intricately and be so aesthetically pleasing on the eye that we can't seem to adapt to a plan B. And just the set pieces. I'm convinced now we are the worst team in the EFL attacking set pieces. I can't remember the last time we actually scored a goal directly from a set piece, unless either of you can remember one, and I'm going to be made to look like an idiot there. But I'm struggling to remember the last. It's got to the point where when we have a corner, I'm not excited for it because it's like, well, our corners half the time don't beat the first man, and whenever they do beat the first man, it never seems to directly find our players in the box. And I do understand because a lot of opposition players have 6 foot tall, lanky people to be able to head the ball away. But you're right, we should be able to use the likes of Mason Burstow, the likes of Joe Bellingham, the likes of Dan Ballard, whoever else. We should be able to use them effectively. And again, it's one where there is going to. This is where I think down the line, Burstow, I still have belief will prove to be a good signing. Not necessarily in terms of goal scoring, but although that would be welcome, is that he's going to be the full. If he once he adapts to what we're doing, and we adapt to having him in the system, it might mean that he's then the focal point used to be where, and I'm not saying he's going to be Ross Stewart's level, obviously, but I mean, he could be the focal point that allows our wingers and inside forwards or whatever you want to say to run in behind and create the space. But yeah, it is a funny one. I mean, again with Burstow and Semedo, obviously neither of them have done much yet. I still think it's way too premature to make a judgment on them at this stage. Yeah. Maybe in about 10 games time, you can start to look and say if they're still not doing anything, then I think it's fair to start questioning them. But at the same time, if your standard is to get promoted, the counter argument is, when are you going to start questioning them, I suppose? It just depends on what you expect from the season.
Yeah. Well, a standout player from these last two games, John, if you had to pick one.
I'd probably have to say Dan Neil on consistency for both. Yes, just I am very much a Dan Neil lover and will always be, even when he probably signs for Liverpool in the summer. But yeah, there we go.
That is quite possible. Michael, standout.
I have to go for the obvious. I go for Clark. I think Clark obviously was the match winner really at Blackburn, and his quality won us the game. And I actually thought even yesterday, even though he wasn't as most effective as he could be, and there were times he frustrated me, he was probably the one who was. We were probably guilty of giving the ball to him constantly and getting him to. So there you go, just skin past three people and score. But I think it's a testament because 2-3 men on him every time. And I think even then, I still thought he managed to at least recycle the ball well and try and make space for others.
Yeah. Well, next game's Friday night. Sheffield Wednesday away on Sky. They have not won a game yet this season. They've got 2 points, one of them against Middlesbrough and one of them
Leeds
against
the other one.
Leeds. Yeah. Obviously Middlesbrough haven't started particularly well either, and I think that could be the game after as well, potentially. I'm not sure. But, Sheffield Wednesday not in a good place. They want their owners out. They've now turned on the manager. They want the manager out. The team that they've got isn't a championship team, and I think they'd say it themselves. The quality's lacking. Obviously, Barry Bannon's still there, and I'm sure anyone that watches on Sky will be sick of hearing his name by the end of the night. But it's again one of these games, John, that Sunderland have to go there and win.
Yeah, definitely. Like we were saying earlier, if the remit is, playoffs, and above, then you have to go to these places and get points. I think we're a better team away from home. Can we go there and, we need to get an early goal, I think. We can't afford to start slowly. If you do that and you give them, something to hold on to, I think we're probably in a bit of trouble. But go there, score early on if you can, make the crowd obviously turn. That will definitely help us. But yeah, I'm fully looking forward to sort of bouncing back after the disappointment of the Cardiff game.
Yeah, Michael, we'll start with a score prediction for you for that game.
I'm not going to do reverse psychology. I think I can't be bothered with it. I do think we'll win. I do think we will bounce back, and I think this, on paper, although nothing's guaranteed in this league, you have to go and fight for the points. I think this is the fixture you probably pick to bounce back with. So I'll go. Right, this might fall flat on my face. I'll go 4-1 Sunderland. I'm fancying a comfortable victory here, as long as nothing stupid happens, like a man getting sent off or their keeper having a worldie. If we put the application in and it's 11v11, match their effort, we should be beating them. There's no excuse not to.
Yeah, John.
I'll go for a 3-0 win. Maybe even a goal from Rustin.
Michael's favourite clean sheet.
Yeah, well, every time I predict one, we concede, so that's why I don't do it anymore.
Reverse psychology, then.
To an extent, yes. Fine, scratch that. 2-1 Chef Wed, first win.
Well, that game is on Friday. Like I say, it is on Sky. We'll get a podcast out over the weekend to talk about that game and look ahead to the next game as well. But until then, we will see you later.
That's all, folks.